This is the Art Beauty Podcast where we are always reaching for truth in beauty. Remember, the people on the show aren't paying to be here, so we get to ask the questions that we know you want answers to because you deserve to be informed so you can make the best choices for yourself. With that said, I'm Amber, and today my fabulous co-host is Dr. Robert Schwarcz. He is an oculofacial plastic and reconstructive surgeon and also the founder of Orvos Skin Science. He's located right down the street from me in New York City, and I want to just say a great welcome to the show. Thanks for being here, Dr. Schwarcz.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
I'm excited to have you here too. I've been hearing so much about this, and I don't know if it's because now I'm like in my 40s and I'm starting to know a lot more people who are looking into eyelid lifts, but I know that they are on the rise. Is this something that you're finding in your practice?
Well, I specialize in eyelids, so they've always been on the rise for me, but
Okay.
the starting point, the entry point is definitely changed where people are coming in a little bit younger now.
So when you say younger, like what kind of age group are we talking about?
So 40 to 50 as opposed to 50 to 60 when I first started practice. So it's definitely shifted quite a bit younger. Obviously, if someone really doesn't need it, we turn them away, but we're picking up earlier entry points.
And why do you think that is? Is it because we're starting to notice it more, or because, there's more sagging happening early on in life?
I don't think it's changed where there's more sagging. I think we're more aware now,
Okay.
um, because of podcasts like yours. People are becoming more informed. Social media, they're becoming more informed, and they're sort of starting to look at themselves differently because of the visuals that they see on social media. People getting it done, or there's a lot of makeup tutorials now. So now they're starting to be more aware of it.
So when we're talking about, this idea of eyelid life, right? And please forgive me because I can never say the words. It's an
Upper
blepharoplasty.
blepharoplasty and lower blepharoplasty. Yeah,
Thank you. We will call them upper bleph and lower bleph if that's okay for this
that is how we
podcast.
should call them. I totally
Um,
agree.
Amazing, amazing. So, I feel like in my family, personally, my father's side, my sister, they both had very, very heavy eyelids. My father's had his eyelid surgery now done actually twice, because I grew up and he would always kind of read holding his eyes up like this, and we used
Huh.
to kind of tease, but it really became problematic with things like driving, reading, and vision. But not only going to a point that is like so severe, what are some of the other things that people are like coming into? Is it just sort of more of a hooded eye? Is it more of that sagging? Or are there other things? Is it wrinkling around the eyes?
For the upper eyelids, it's that extra skin overhanging that cause that hooded look.
Yeah.
But everybody is different anatomically. Like you're obviously different than your father was anatomically because you don't have the hooded
Right.
upper eyelid look, and that has to do with fat distribution and sort of where the eye is set. We look at when we look at difficulty of lower eyelid procedures, we define them based on vectors, based on whether they're a positive or a negative vector. And what I mean by that is if I look at sort of the profile, I want to see whether the eyeball is sticking out more than the bone on the cheek or
Okay.
even with it. And if it's sticking out more, then there's less support for the lower eyelids. Those cases tend to have a little extra skin overhanging and a lot of other things that go with it. So you don't have that in your case.
Well, no, luckily I don't, but for people out there who might be wondering, like, is this something that is right for me? And, of course you should always go see a board certified, not only plastic surgeon, but an oculofacial plastic surgeon, right? I
Thank you.
mean,
Yeah.
somebody, right. But for everybody's listening right now, what is the difference between that? Like, what does an oculofacial plastic surgeon do?
We specialize around the eyes. So most of us started off with ophthalmology, got board certified in eye surgery, and then moved on to learn plastic surgery of the eyes and the face. So we're very well equipped and comfortable with areas around the eye. I also, because I'm an oculofacial plastic surgeon, I also have to deal with a lot of fixing of other people's um, work. So I know how to steer out of trouble when needed beforehand, because we're seeing complications and fixing the complications as well, more than a lot of the other specialties. So I don't touch anything below the neck. I don't do tummies or anything like that. I just up north.
Yeah.
Um,
You talk about like the corrections too. And, I feel like, again, I know for my own family, my father had to go the first time they didn't take enough. But he was telling me that, his doctor was explaining that if they, if they want to be a little bit, I don't know, careful with that, because one of the negative things that can happen is if you take too much, your eyes won't close.
So, getting into the risks of the surgeries of the upper and lower eyelid blepharoplasty, taking out too much is really unforgiving, because you wouldn't be able to close the eye totally. But let's back up and say it's not that bad, and let's say
Okay.
that it's just a more common thing would be asymmetry. So too much skin is left on one side versus the other, and that's easily rectified. You just trim a little bit more on one side. But it could be something as devastating as taking out too much fat from an upper eyelid. My fastest growing population are men.
Okay.
So 30% of my patient population are men. If I started stripping out too much fat from men, from a male upper eyelid, it'll hollow them out, a la Kenny Rogers, or like the look where it started to look surgical or different. Um, the other thing to consider is the shape of the eye culturally. So I have, prior to the pandemic, I had a practice in Shanghai, and I went with three other surgeons, and we operated on the Chinese population over there for a week at a time. And so the Asian eye configuration is very different because of the fat distribution and where it attaches down on the eyelid. And you have to be respectful of that, or it will change the way that person looks. And I don't think that's a great idea either. Complications for lower eyelid blepharoplasty could be that the eye is pulled down and it waters, and it's not protecting the eyeball, because the purpose and the function of eyelids are to protect the precious eyeball.
Right.
And if it dries out, or it's not blinking appropriately and all those things, even though it looks great, function won't be there, and then that's another problem.
I mean, I got to say, all of this sounds like kind of scary. And as you're talking about fat, um, I'm wondering if we should backtrack a little bit, because I was under the assumption that when you go in for an upper or lower bluff, that you're really just removing skin. So when you talk about fat, where is there fat along the upper eyelid?
So let's compare my upper eyelid to yours.
Okay.
I can see a lot of the platform of your upper eyelid, and that's why when you put on your eyelid makeup, the eyeshadow specifically is very visible.
Okay.
Um, if I were to do that, you wouldn't see my eyelid makeup, and it would run into the upper, and maybe even, because some of my skin is overhanging, it might even touch my mascara.
Right.
So that's because I have a profound amount of fat compared to yours. You have no fat on your upper eyelid comparatively. I have a full upper eyelid with fat in there. So it pushes everything forward. So I look at eyelids in a world of contours, not in the world of extra skin. So upper eyelid surgery is removal of some extra skin, maybe sculpting or removing a small amount of inner corner fat on some patients. But I'll even go as far as hesitating to remove any of the muscle, just to make sure that I'm only removing a certain amount of skin so it's even. The lower eyelid is not the case. I don't
Okay.
often remove skin. Most of the time, I'm taking fat from the belly and grafting it into the upper eye to the lower eyelid and cheek junction. That's a big part of my lower eyelid surgeries, because that cheek eyelid junction, that point where the cheek and the eyelid meet, are super important to maintain. The sign of a youthful eyelid is a youthful lower eyelid is a short lower eyelid,
Right.
meaning the break of the eyelid where it starts to become the cheek is very short. And as we age, it elongates. and because it starts to hollow out.
Yes.
And if I can remove a little bit of the fat that's causing the bag, but then add back the fat at a lower place where the cheek eyelid junction meet, it changes the whole dynamic of the appearance in a good way. And then I usually either, if I take out a little strip of skin that might be there, or even more commonly, I do a resurfacing laser to tighten the skin and maybe get rid of some of the fine lines, maybe some hyperpigmentation, and it cleans it up beautifully.
You know, I've seen a lot of incredible transformations with with people who have, you know, like my husband has naturally has those naturally kind of heavy dark circle bags. His mother had them, he has them. I've seen incredible transformations by adding not only fat but also filler back into those areas. But I do know with under eye filler you have to be very careful, right? I mean, this is something that I've really been wanting to do this a little bit because that's where I think in my aging process, I started to see a little bit of that hollowing out, but I've been afraid because I've just heard that it can be really scary.
That is a really important thing that we are just touching on now. So I learned lower eyelid filler from basically the guy that first started doing it in 2004. And so I've been doing lower eyelid filler for 20 years and I've come full circle. I've also done most of the FDA trials for the different types of filler that go in there. I really think that the different types of filler make a huge difference because some are very hydrophilic. And if you draw a lot of water to that area, it can look very puffy and swollen. The other thing is far fewer than we thought people are candidates for lower eyelid filler. So unfortunately, it's not, not everyone is a candidate for lower eyelid filler. If you have very thin skin, if you have like fluid retention in the area, if you have a tight septum where it looks like there's a fat pad, but then underneath it, it's a very tight skin over there. That filler won't necessarily stay where we want it. There is some amount of filler migration that could be devastating on some people, and it could be, inconsequential on somebody else. It's definitely patient selection is very important for that. So you don't want to go to someone that doesn't do surgery and understand the fact that filling is important for those cases, or at least know when to say, hey, I think this might not be the right case to fill. Let's get a second opinion. Sometimes I'll get that and I'll send the patient back to whoever their injector was and say, they're fine, go ahead and fill it, but be cautious. And with lower eyelid filler, less is significantly more, because if you overfill, it's devastating. And then finally, I'll say, I will never do lower eyelid surgery on someone that has filler in that area. It causes an exuberant amount of swelling, so I dissolve it every time. And
Got
it's
it. So not like somebody who so essentially, and what I like to do is just kind of prep to the audience. If you are somebody who has either had eyelid filler, underlid filler, or under eye filler, and you're thinking about, one day I want to have the option of surgery, that's not so much the issue as you won't do it on a patient who currently has that filler in there.
I won't. Yeah.
Got it.
I'll just try to dissolve it. I won't.
Got it.
I won't. Yeah, I won't necessarily, say you're not a candidate, I'll never touch you. I'll try to dissolve it. The issue with fat injected into lower eyelids as well, that could sometimes, if it's injected too superficially, get in the way. So I might need to do something about that. When I encounter unwanted or poorly grafted fat, it is pretty difficult to get out.
Wow. I
It's
heard
injected.
too that with certain injectables, they can actually sometimes exacerbate the sort of appearance of darkness because there's a bluish tint. Is that correct?
So that's called a Tyndall effect.
Okay.
And if we can imagine a raindrop on the concrete, it magnifies the concrete below. So fluid will, because of diffraction of light, will magnify an area more than the surrounding area. gel, which is what hyaluronic acid is that we're injecting, is a clear gel that magnifies the area underneath it. And if someone has it's injected too superficially, and they have very fair skin and dark musculature underneath it, or perhaps they bled and the bleeding got into that site, all of these can cause a color change. And usually it's a blue or purplish hue that we're seeing. It's very difficult to get rid of. That can stay for years and years and years. So ideally, if you see it, you'd want to dissolve it as quickly as possible. It's not an emergency, but it should be done soon so that that transparency, that magnification that we see from the filler is lessened.
You know, I want to make sure that I'm never discouraging anybody from doing this, right? Because, like you said, you really specialize in upper bleph, lower bleph. You do under eye filler very successfully. You know, for people who are, you know, maybe not in the New York area, who wouldn't be able to come and see an expert like you, what kind of guidance do you give people when they're thinking about, hey, this is something I'm considering? Like, where should they start? How can they do the research?
Um, you know, Candidly, there's you can find board certified oculofacial plastic surgeons all over the world. So you can start with that. But there are plenty of qualified people that aren't oculofacial plastic surgeons that do a beautiful job with lower eyelid filler. You just want to make sure that they have a decent amount of experience with it. And I would present myself with, hey, am I a candidate for this? Do you think um, I'm a good candidate for it? Instead of, I would like to get filler in my lower eyelids.
What a great point, right? So that's where I was kind of going, is that sometimes, you know, we are so bombarded with things on social and in some ways so well informed, but yet sometimes it's about not going in and saying, this is what I want, as opposed to, hey, here's the effect, here's the result I would like. What is the best course of action for my particular facial structures? You know, in talking about these types of surgeries, we'll now go back to surgery. What is sort of the process for these? What is the recovery time?
It's generally 1 to 2 weeks. It's not painful. Um, they wake up with no pain, and most people never take anything more than perhaps a Tylenol that night. Bruising and swelling will definitely be expected for up to the first week. Um, and then after that, you know, vision is maybe a little blurry for a day or two, because if we do the surgery from the inside of the eyelid, it might lose a little bit, and combined with the patient's tears, they will definitely be puffy. Swollen is the number one thing you see for a few days. I have them ice. I like frozen peas, but you can use pretty much anything that's cold. And I try to have them ice every hour while awake for the first 3 days. And then we prescribe erythromycin, this antibiotic ointment for the upper eyelids, which do have stitches. The lower eyelids, if I'm going from the inside of the eyelid, which is most of the time, there's no stitches. So we have an antibiotic drop for that. And that's the extent of it. Um, as far as sleeping, I like them to have their head elevated so that, you know, gravitationally the flow of the swelling will head downwards.
You know, just a quick little PSA on that, because I've done a number of different lasers and other treatments. And I had a good friend who was like, no matter what you're doing, anything that's going to cause any kind of swelling, it's a good idea to sleep elevated, because that way, even with like heavy duty laser procedures, you can kind of have some of that swelling go down just a little bit. You know, in terms of, and we know that this really varies depending on where you live and cost, and of course the surgeon. Are there ballpark numbers for like about what this costs?
So it really it runs the gamut from very experienced surgeons who would charge more. In major cities, it would run more, but generally speaking, you know, 5 to 15,000 is
Oh,
a rough estimate for upper, and then the same thing for the lower. There's
wow,
there's operating room costs.
right,
There's anesthesia fees. Now there are people that will you know fall below and significantly above that number,
of
but
course.
somewhere around there.
is
Um,
is kind of the range.
it's
And is that
kind of the range. Um, it's not cheap, but it definitely is, something that's sort of a permanent thing you're doing on your body. So I would encourage you to do homework.
definitely always do your homework. And just again, reminder everybody, I think we all know this. Plastic surgery is not where you want to get the Groupon. This is not where you want to save, right? My daddy always told me two things not to save your money on are birth control and plastic surgery. So, yeah, look, at the end of the day, in some ways, you're going to get what you pay for. We were talking about your patients getting younger. And I don't want to go too far off base, but we're seeing a lot of this like fat removal. The buccal fat removal has become a big trend, especially in younger people. And I had a doctor on recently, and we were talking about the fact that our faces change as we age. You're going to lose a lot of that fat. So she really cautions against people until you're like into your 30s, 40s to not even consider that, because I know what my face looked like in my 30s. It was much rounder. Right now that I'm in my 40s, it's kind of slimmed a little because you lose that fat. In terms of these eyelid procedures, is there sort of like a range where you're like, maybe it's too early? And on the contrary, is there a time where it's too late?
Great question. With regards to, well, I know we're not talking about that. But with regards to buccal fat removal, that was it's cyclical. It was in vogue 20 years ago. Then people said definitely don't do it because you won't age well. You'll look too old. You'll look hollowed out. And then we come full circle. But there are some patients that have very round faces
Sure.
and would just do well with it no matter what.
Right.
Translating that into an eyelid situation, there are just some people that have bags under their eyes when they're 12 years old.
Yeah.
And that's not getting better. It's just going to be the same. So, if not worse, through as they age. So there's nothing wrong with, starting that at a younger age, getting rid of that. The benefit of doing something at a younger age, besides easier time healing,
right?
So recovery should be better. The tissues are more pliable and they bounce back really well. More importantly, you will have that much more time to enjoy the results.
Sure.
So you're and fortunately or unfortunately, we're living in a social media selfie time right now where we're hypercritical on our faces. Right now, I'm looking at my face in on this Zoom right now, and I would normally not be staring at myself right now. So the Zoom phenomena also created a younger generation to come in for it. So I don't really think that there's like a cutoff, but it's someone who's in their early 20s, unless they had bags since they were teenagers, I'm really turning them away. And as far as like upper limit, if you're healthy enough to do it, cardiovascular, everything is okay, do it. It'll make you happy and make you feel better. Just do it.
I love that. We very much support plastic surgery on this show for the right reasons, with the correct doctors. And that's why I would like to bring on, because you are the expert and because some of the questions, is there anything else that you feel like your patients are asking you that maybe I didn't address on this that you think is really important? Obviously, there's so much more. We could talk for hours about this. And if you're considering this, you should go see a professional, get that consultation, ask all the questions. But is there anything that you're like, you know what, this comes up all the time?
So there's a couple of things. There's something called upper eyelid ptosis. It's PTOSIS. There's actually a drop that was an eye drop that was formulated called Upneek, and it's a great party trick. You bring it and your eyes pop open really nicely. There's some confusion with upper eyelid extra skin. It's called dermatochalasis versus a droopy upper eyelid, not from skin, but rather from the muscle sagging, and that's called ptosis. Right. So I spend a lot of time differentiating the two, and oftentimes patients have an undiagnosed or unrecognized ptosis that needs to be corrected. For that to be corrected, I have to shorten the levator muscle, the muscle that opens the eye, so that someone can permanently have their eye open a little bit more. It almost looks like they're closing their eyes, not because of the extra skin. So the differentiation between extra skin and the lagging muscle are two different things I like to talk about. And then the other idea to appreciate is how brows or foreheads come in relation to the upper eyelid and how they're so integral in eyelid position. Because if you pull your brow up, the higher you pull your brow up, the more it exposes the upper eyelid area. That's called the sulcus. When that gets exposed, then there would be less skin that's overhanging, or maybe it might expose more hollowness. And so something else would have to be addressed. So I always take the brow complex into consideration. And the thing I've been doing since the beginning of practice that I think hopefully other surgeons are doing as well now, but at the time I was a trailblazer with it, is I ask every patient to bring in a photograph of themselves when they think they look the best, and it should be at least 20 years old. The best are wedding photos, graduation photos, passport photos, where they're not smiling, super animated, and like in a big crowd of people with like a blurry photo. And I will blow up in my room. I have this in all these exam rooms. I have screens, and I'll blow up a picture from 20 years ago, let's say, and then a current photo, and we start to analyze where the aging process happened, and I try to address those areas. Oftentimes, patients always had low brows and heavy upper eyelids. I don't want to clear that up because it'll change the way they look completely. And it may still look great, but it won't look like them unless it's something they've always wanted, never had, and want to address. So these are things that always come up in that initial lengthy consultation that I have with patients, just to kind of get to the meat of what really should we accomplish with this surgery so that we can both be happy with it.
I love that. It's clear that you are such a, it's clear why you are such a sought after plastic surgeon, because, you know, you're not coming in there saying, hey, let me fix this. Let me just make this look aesthetically what I think would be great. It's like, let me make this the best version of you. Let's restore the best version of you. You know, in cases sometimes when it's like a brow, do you sometimes say we don't even need to do an eyelid? We're looking at more of a brow lift?
Absolutely. And sometimes those are younger patients.
Yeah.
And brows, I do endoscopically with the camera. So those incisions are hidden in the hairline. And we go through that. So oftentimes they would just get a brow lift, or they would get a brow lift and a much more conservative upper eyelid, because now I don't need to take as much.
Right.
And then there's variations of brow lifts called temporal lifts, where it's just lifting the tail of the brow, which is what becomes hooded most commonly at first.
Oh my gosh, we got to bring you back for a whole thing on brow lifts. Clearly, there's so much to go over. You know, before I let you go, I do want to discuss, because you actually have your own line of skincare, Orvo Skincare. I've got the products right here. Tell us about this. Why did you decide, you know, to create this line?
So it took me about 4 years to do it. I did not want to white label it. White label means somebody has a product and you just put your label on it. I have been whole food, plant-based for about 14 years now.
Wow, good for you.
And yeah, there they are. I also brought a few here too, right? So I did that not, I did that because my cholesterol was high, and I didn't want to go on medication. And I read the China study like everyone else did, and I thought, hey, this is great. Let me try it. I felt good afterwards. My labs corrected themselves, and I like it. Then I started to look at chemicals in this, in our world, and the skincare lines that we were selling were these medical grade skincare lines, and we still sell them, and I think a lot of them are great. But why not try to make something that's plant-based, that can accomplish the same,
Right.
that doesn't smell like it's coming off the shelf of Whole Foods, but rather, nothing wrong with that, but rather something that is, of the class that I'd like to have. So
Elegant.
Exactly. So Orvos means doctor in Hungarian. My family's from Hungary. So I went back about 4 or 5 years ago, and I spent some time with estheticians there.
Okay.
And their estheticians learn to make their own creams. So I learned from ground up like what's involved with it. I'm not a dermatologist. I think that those guys are super well equipped at learning this. So I needed to relearn everything. Um, and I, other than the grapefruit fresh scent that's in the
Yeah. Because I
moisturizer,
immediately smelled it. Yes. This is the moisturizer and what it's so beautiful.
and the eye cream was my baby just because I'm the eye guy. So I started with the eye cream. That took me the longest. So instead of retinols, which we know can help reduce wrinkles, I put bakuchiol in there, which is a plant found in Malaysia that can mimic it. Instead of vitamin C, I found the fruit that had the most potent form of vitamin C, which is the cockadoo plum in Australia, and they all have high concentrations of that. Um, and the I wanted the smell of the eye cream to smell like something reminiscent from my childhood, where my grandma
Oh,
had a lot of creams around, and I would always smell that. They didn't have a lot of scent to it, but it had some kind of familiarity. So
it's
that's what I worked
it's
on.
almost like a rose scent, and I love the beautiful applicator here. That
I
is
love that
really
too.
stunning.
Yeah,
Wow, it's almost like a lovely, like a rose scent to me. A very, very light, but
so
yes,
the
definitely high, elegant products.
great. So I'm proud of them. I love them. I usually give the eye cream to most of my patients that have had eye surgery just to start. And so I know that it's very hypoallergenic and easily tolerated for 99% of the people that I tested it on. So I can easily give it to them as they can transition into something out of Aquaphor and into this, but then for the everyday as well. So all these products are useful for twice a day. And then finally, I most recently made the oil. I'm not a big oil guy, but I like the fact that this had a satin finish and didn't feel oily, and that is vitamin E, sunflower seed oil. It's kind of it. There's not much else in it that would cause any issues. It's pretty clean.
It's also
All
nice that it's a very pared down line, I've got to say. It's not 1,000 products, it's three.
That's all. I actually only wanted to do the eye cream, and then people convinced me they liked it. Hey, at
Mm,
least do a moisturizer, and while you're there, something for the night. Okay, that's it. So no
fine.
toners,
No
no
more.
face washes or anything. Get that somewhere else. I'm really proud of it. I like it a lot, and it's been great.
One thing too, going back to the recovery for surgery,
Mhm.
when you're recovering, like how long is it? So I know you said it's like 1 to 2 weeks, but how long before you can start wearing makeup then again in those areas?
So if we do laser resurfacing, the top layer of skin peels off. It almost
Right,
looks like coffee grinds of the dead skin coming off. I don't want makeup on that until the skin is re-epithelialized or
right.
formed a covering. Then it's appropriate to do it. I ask patients to use clean makeup, maybe something that is in a new form. So buy new makeup afterwards. I like sort of mineral based cleaner makeup in the beginning so that I know that there won't be reactivity on the new
Mm.
skin that's forming. If we didn't do laser work and it's just, sort of cutting and there's just some bruising and swelling within a week or two, they could put makeup on. But if they did do laser, then it might be 2 weeks before they can do it.
Can I ask you really quickly? I don't want to put you on the spot, but are there certain makeup brands that you are liking that you feel like are clean and that do well or that you recommend to your patients?
I'm not loyal to any of these because there's so many in the market that are great. Bare Minerals is an easy one to just put your hands on because I know that that's a pretty clean line. But I don't mind anything as long as there's no reactivity to it. For makeup, I don't get into the makeup world for obvious reasons. I don't have personal experience with it.
Got it. You know what? Hey, fair, fair, good to know. So listen, if people want to come, I feel like there's so much more, for everybody who's listening, obviously when you're talking about anything, especially around the eyes, but any plastic surgery, you know, there's a lot to consider. I know we only scratched the surface here. If people are interested in reaching out to you, can they do do you do consultations virtually?
Yeah, I do them all the
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how can they find you?
They can call the office 212-396-4400. I have a website, www.naturalfacedoctor, that's dr.com. Or I follow me on Instagram, Dr. Robert Schwartz. And those are the easiest ways to sort of get hold of me.
Amazing. And you know what? Last question, I promise. You know, we hear a lot about people traveling for surgeries, and I know there are some that are like a little bit more iffy, right? Like traveling for a facelift can be tricky because you probably don't want to hop on a plane right away. Are people traveling for these kind of upper and lower blephs?
Absolutely. I have a lot of out of town folks coming in specifically from Europe, South America, and the Middle East. And they will stay. If there's sutures in, I really ask them to stay until the sutures come out 6 or 7 days later. But if they need to get back, I have contacts in other places where I can
Right.
communicate with them virtually. 48 hours is definitely a rule of please don't leave for the next 48 hours. I want to monitor you. I
Sure.
don't operate right before I go away on vacation for the same reason. I want to be around to see them. I don't operate on Fridays. Monday through Thursday is fair game just because I want, if there's anything that should arise, I want to be available to them. And I don't want them flying out of town for it.
Amazing. I feel like you provided such wonderful information. I would love to have you back again to talk all about brow lifts. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to listen on to your podcast. I've really been enjoying it.
Oh, amazing. I appreciate your support. And of course, everybody listening at home, if you have any questions you want me to pass on to Dr. Robert Schwartz or his team, I'm always happy to do so. You can email me at hello@artbeautypodcast.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Art Beauty Podcast. And as always, we will see you next Tuesday, maybe looking a little bit more bright-eyed. Bye.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you. Great seeing you.